You know, everyone gets old if they're lucky. Otherwise, they end up where I'm at right now, which is a cemetery. As the old saying goes, it's always a good day when you're above ground. So I actually love walking in cemeteries because it really does. Well, I'm a big history person, so it always ties me to history, but also it's a reminder that, all these people here in this cemetery, they're gone onto something else at this point, and they lived their life, however long or short it was. But no matter how old we get, as long as we're still alive, there's still chances for things, there's still opportunities, there's still experiences to be had. So I choose that. So I'm back from the graveyard. It's a really neat graveyard. They got gravestones dating back to the early 1800s, which is really cool. I love looking at the length of people's lives and trying to think about how they might have lived and that sort of thing. So anyway, I'm back, and let's continue with this topic of making peace with aging. Obviously, I know of what I speak because I've had to make my own peace with aging. I'm 70, going to be 71 relatively soon, and it's not going backwards, let me tell you that. It's only going to increase. So let me first talk about like what gets in the way of making peace with aging, because I think not enough is talked about. I went online and I looked up like what different, AI things said about how do you make peace with aging, and I got relatively similar things, and I'm not going to talk about all the things they said, but the one thing they didn't talk about on there is what gets in the way of making peace with aging. In other words, why do we have so much difficulty with it? And I think that's a more important thing. So I'm going to talk about that right now. And then I'll finish up with some what I think are the most important things that really help you make peace with aging. So what gets in the way? Well, fear, pain, both mental and physical. Those things really get in the way of making peace with aging. Also, if you've grown up and you've witnessed people in your family or close to you having difficulty with the aging process, then you're going to have even more fear or concern about it as you get older. If you've watched a lot of elderly relatives really suffer, and maybe have serious chronic illness or something like that, it will then affect your view of what it's like to age. Now, conversely, if you grew up and you saw people aging in a really positive way, in other words, they kept active, their mental faculties were sharp, they really were able to, enjoy their older years without as much trouble as some people have, then that will also affect your perception of it. So the thing that affects our fear about it and concern about it is often the things we've seen in our own family or in our own experiences. Also, I think it has to do with your own mindset in general. If you're a person that as you got older as an adult, you worried about every passing year or every passing decade, then obviously you already have some built-in inherent fear of getting older. My mother was one of those. She hated getting older. She was one of those that always talked about she was 39 and holding for like, I don't know, 50 years at least, maybe close to 50 years. And she just thought it was so funny. Well, okay, I never saw the humor in that because obviously people know you're not 39 and holding. I know viewers will come on here and take offense to that because they're hung up on it too. I realize some people are hung up on the age thing and the number thing and whatever, and they think, oh, you should never have to tell anyone your age. Well, I'm in the opposite camp. I don't understand why there's a problem in telling people your age. I'm sorry, I never have. Never understood it. So if you're one of those people that is a problem for you, that's fine. That's your thing. That was my mother's thing too, but it didn't serve her well. And so as she aged, she became more miserable, more depressed, more kind of locked inside herself. Like she just, she had been a very expansive person when she was young, in the sense that she was, she could be the life of the party. She was somebody that people liked generally. And some of that admittedly was a mask. She wasn't always really honest about who she was, but she was a person that could really throw herself into the world. Like she knew how to do that. But as she got older, she withdrew. And she withdrew more and more. And she spent many, many years, just as I consider them, really wasted, doing nothing. Nothing at all. And not just somebody, I enjoy relaxing. I enjoy doing nothing at times, but I don't do nothing all the time. And so the thing is that she really became a shell of her former self. And the only time she really embraced aging was when she got close to being 90 years old. And she was really somehow excited about turning 90. And then that was her last birthday. She died a few months later. So I think at the end, she reached some acceptance about age. But it's like, wouldn't her life have been so much more full if she had embraced it 30 years before? I mean, I just think of all the possibilities she might have had in her life, the things she might have accomplished, the people she might have affected in a positive way, the things she might have learned. So she was a lesson to me in what not to do. And my mother's fear of age and fear of death really made her withdraw and not throw herself into life more fully. And I vowed not to do that. Even when I saw her doing this from the time I was probably even younger than 30 years old. And I said, that's it. I cannot do that. I cannot go down that same path. I'm really grateful that I have not done that same thing. And it's tempting sometimes. I mean, it is. It's tempting to just say, oh, I'll just sit here and just watch TV or movies or whatever, or read a book, and that's it, and not just do anything in my life. I wouldn't have started a YouTube channel. I wouldn't wouldn't have traveled to Europe. I wouldn't have done these things. But my attitude is, you do as much as you can for as long as you can. There comes a time when many people, as they get older, are going to lack the physical ability to do certain things, or the mental ability to do certain things, such as developing dementia. And the point is, until that happens, do as much as you can. And I mean as you can, not push yourself to the point you collapse or do too much. I mean, do as much as you're physically and mentally able to do. But my mantra is to lean into aging. Lean into aging instead of running from it, instead of being fearful of it. Because the fear and the physical and mental pain that you just naturally experience as you get older, I mean, it's not fun. As I've mentioned before on the channel, the famous saying, which I think it was Betty Davis said, is that, aging is, getting old is not for sissies, okay? And the point is, no, it's not. It's not easy. But you don't have to make it harder than it already is. Can I do the things that I did when I was 30 years old? No, I can't. There's things I cannot do anymore. I'm filming this a couple of weeks after the death of Robert Redford, who I just adored. I adored him as an actor. I adored him as a human being. And I saw an interview he gave a few years before he died when he was talking about aging. And he said, the thing that surprised him, the thing that was hard for him as he aged, is that when he was young, he was able to do physically. He had been a very physical person. He'd been very athletic. He said he could just do almost anything he wanted to do when he was young. And as he got older, he realized how much that got curtailed, how much he was not able to do anymore. And he said that was a really sobering thing for him, because he realized the great risk if you don't pay attention to that. In other words, if you're one of these people that say, oh, I can still do crazy things when I'm 70 years old. Okay, well, but if you have an accident or you fall down and break something, trust me, you will pay for that. And it will not be fun. It will not be fun. So Robert Redford was talking about that and how he had to pay attention to the fact that there was just certain things he wasn't going to be able to do anymore. See, I thought that was a very realistic way of looking at age. Not in a, he wasn't depressed as he was saying it. He was just saying it that, you know, this is a fact. This is a fact of life. Okay. So now that I've talked about that, about like what gets in the way of us making peace with age, how can we enhance that? How can we enhance the making peace with age? Well, again, lean into aging, engage with it, make the most of getting older. You know, the old saying again, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Well, when you're older, you got to make a lot more lemonade, apparently. And so some of the things that I find helpful, and I'm going to look at this list that I, you know, wrote down from stuff I looked at online, and I'm just going to pick out the things I think are the most important. Practicing gratitude. Still remembering to be grateful for everything you still have is so important. Practicing gratitude, living in the moment as well. Just, you know, do that as much as you can. Also, focus on what you can control. Don't worry about the things you can't control. Like the story I just told about Robert Redford, it's like, he realized there's certain things physically he wasn't gonna be able to do anymore. So you have to let go of those things. You cannot keep saying, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do this. Focus on what you can control, I think, is an important part. Another one I think is really important is embracing learning. Continue to learn something new all the time. Find a new interest and you know, research it online, read books about it, watch documentaries about it. Maybe if you can travel, go and see certain things that you've read about. But embrace learning overall. I talked about this when I was overseas. Learning a new language is incredibly good for the brain. Learning music is also incredibly good for the brain as you get older. So embrace learning is a really important one. And then in the physical sense, keep moving. Keep moving. So whatever you can do. If you're chair bound and you can't really get up and walk around a lot, then do upper body exercises. Walk if you can. Do as much walking as you can. Swim if you can. Do yoga. Anything you can do physically is going to enhance the quality of your life as you get older. And strength training is also important so that you can still be strong enough to get up and out, in and out of chairs and upstairs and things like that. A couple of the things they talked about with physical, I thought, yeah, I don't know if that's really, like they talked about the importance of getting a good sleep. Well, of course it's important. But you know what? Most people as they get older, for whatever reasons, a lot of it medication related, can't get as good a sleep as they used to. So you get the best sleep you can. And sometimes, you know, it's not going to be great. You just have to work on that one. And then the last thing I want to mention, which I know I've mentioned in other videos not related to aging, but is how important it is to find a sense of purpose in your life still. Now, maybe your purpose is your family. Maybe you have a really lovely family, you have lots of kids, grandkids, whatever, and maybe your sense of purpose is helping the next generations. If that's the case, that's great. If you don't have family, though, then find another purpose. Find a way to connect with people in other kinds of media, such as I'm doing here with YouTube, or find ways to, you know, join groups if that's what you're into, and connect with people that are interested in the same things you are. Find a sense of purpose. You know, a lot of people have found their creativity later in life and become fabulous writers, artists, musicians, you know, even until their 80s. And again, as long as you're able to do things, do them. Yeah, I'm so happy I took up guitar 5 years ago. I had no idea how much that was going to enrich my life when I first started practicing, but it's tremendously enriched my life. And you know, now I've written songs, I have performed, you know, like at farmers markets and, you know, things like that. But it's not so much that I really want to be famous for it or anything like that. It's just that I love music, and I'm glad I have the ability to do that. So find a sense of purpose, find a way to express your creativity with that, possibly, and stay with it. People who have a sense of purpose live longer with a sense of passion. They really do. They live longer with a sense of passion. And that's what I want for myself. No matter how long I live, I want to have that sense of commitment and passion till the moment I go. So that's my talk on aging today, on making peace with aging. It is very important to make aging your friend and not your enemy. Because you know what? If you live in denial of aging, if you just say, oh, well, I'm just not going to get old, well, then you might not get old. You might die sooner rather than later. And if that's what you want, that's your choice. But I prefer to make peace with it, make aging my friend rather than my enemy, and not be in denial about what is involved. It's no good keeping your head in the sand about it either. Be realistic about what to expect physically from yourself, and realistically, I can't push myself the way I did even 10 years ago. I just can't. There's some days that I have a day where I have to just, have like a brownout, I call it. I basically just, hang out, don't do a whole lot, maybe do some planning and things like that. And some days that's what I have to do because that's part of getting older. But most of the time, I can get done what I want to get done, and I'm happy with that. Now, am I going to be able to do that in 10 years from now? I don't know, but I'm not going to worry about it. And so that's my last point on this video is the important thing is don't catastrophize about age. Don't be thinking, oh gosh, what if this happens or this happens or this happens as I get older? I can guarantee you most of the things you're afraid of will never happen, and the thing you're not even thinking about will happen. Case in point, never thought I was going to have a problem with blood pressure. And then I get the weird virus and I get a problem with blood pressure for the first time in my life. So did I ever see that coming? Nope. So the point is, don't catastrophize. Don't be worried about all these things that could happen, because honestly, most of it is just needless worry. Things are going to happen the way they're going to happen, and you're going to get blindsided by some stuff. That's just the nature of life. So the sooner you accept that, the easier it will go. So that's my last thought on that. Until next time, be kind, keep moving forward, and take care. Bye.